Hello everyone, I hope you guys are doing good. This is Salar and you are watching tutorials on JavaScript. So this is our tutorial number 15 and as you know we are learning data types. In our previous tutorials we covered undefined and number data type and I'm sure you have also realized the importance of this topic. Every computer program, not only in JavaScript but also in other languages has only one goal, that is work with data and produce some result. And data is defined with the help of data types. So data types are very important and that's why we are trying to learn them one by one. If you check on the list, our next data type that we need to cover is called null, right? Null is an important data type, but it is bit advanced and I will try to present it in a simple way. So let's check it out. How do we use null in JavaScript programming? So null is a special data type just like undefined and it has only one value which is also null. Let's see how JavaScript specification describes null type and null value. It says variable becomes null type if the value assigned to it is null, and it further says null value means real object reference is missing. It may seem confusing now, but it will make more sense when we write code. And you might be wondering here, what is an object? An object in JavaScript is just a collection of properties, right? And anything can be an object. Let's say a car can be an object because it has properties like name, model, color, etc. And we can create a car object in JavaScript. And this is what I'm going to do now because null data type works together with the object. So we need an object in the program. And you don't need to worry about how do we create object because we have object data type in our list and we will cover it in our coming tutorials, right? So let me create a car object. Object name is car and it has three properties. So like I said, an object is a collection of properties and these are the properties. And this is our object variable. And this whole process can be called object creation because we are using let keyword and trying to create an object. And there is no problem in this code. Object creation was successful. And you can read object's properties in the console using period operator. Let's see how. So this is how we read object's properties. And here we are reading out name property of object car. And we use period operator for this purpose, right? And here in the console, you can see the result. Coming back to the description, it says null value indicates real object is missing, right? Now let's just suppose if this object can't be created, then we must assign null value to our car variable, and null value will indicate real object doesn't exist for some reason. Object creation can be failed. There are so many situations in programming where we create objects based on the situations or conditions, and if the condition fulfill the requirement, then we say create object. Otherwise we say assign null to the variable. This can easily be understood with the help of an example. So let me code an example for you. I am coding a function which creates an object, but the condition is function must be provided name argument. If the name argument is not provided, we would say return null, otherwise return an object, right? Right, so it's a very simple function and it needs name argument. If you don't provide the name argument to the function, this statement becomes true and a null value is returned, the function execution is stopped, right? But if you provide name argument, this will never become true and an object is created using name argument and returned back. And here we are calling the function and the result can be either null value or an object, and we are saving the result in this variable. Now take a look at this calling right here. We are not sending any argument to this function. So this name variable is uninitialized, and an uninitialized variable gets the value of undefined. So in this case, this statement is true and function will return null value. And when we log our object variable, you will see null in the output, and they will see a null value is returned, right? Now we will call this function with an argument. At this time, our name variable is initialized with this string. So the requirement is fulfilled, and now our function will create and return an object. And there you see an object is returned. That was a simple demonstration to show you how we use null in JavaScript programming. Null simply indicates real object is missing, right? And once you know null exists, then you must check for it before you start working with object variable. Like this variable can have null value, and when there is a possibility, you can't just process this variable without checking for null value. And if you do so, your programming practice is not good. You must check for null value because null considered as falsy, right? Now before you process this variable in this cancel log, you can simply write an if statement to check for the null value. So this is how you will program. You will always check for the null when there is a possibility, right? And in programming, you sometimes create a variable which is meant to hold an object reference later on. And when you create such variable, you must initialize it with null, right? Now you can check this variable for null later on in the program to determine if this has been assigned an object reference or not, right? And one interesting thing with null variable is if you try to find out its type using typeof operator, you won't see null in the output. What you see is object. Let's check it out. What you see here, the type of our variable is object, and this should be null instead of object, right? So that was actually a mistake in the early JavaScript implementation, and you can read more about it from the link I left in the description. So my suggestion is don't use typeof to determine null type or null value, right? The summary of this whole tutorial is you will use null or null is used to specify real object reference is missing, and if null can appear in your program, you will always check for it like we did here. And my last comment is avoid dealing with null. There are a couple of approaches that you can use instead of using null in your program. For example, instead of returning null, I can make this function return a default object in case name argument is not provided. I can write code like so now this function can be called with and without argument, and you will always get an object back. You're not dealing with null value anymore, right? So my dear listeners, that was all about null type and null value, and I hope you understand null data type in this tutorial. Our next data type is a string that we will be covering in the next tutorial. I will see you there, and thanks for watching.